So, ladies and gentlemen, we got to talk about how the Supreme Court delivered another major blow to Democrats on redistricting, and how one liberal justice in particular, Ketanji Brown Jackson, she is not happy about it. That's putting it lightly, because Democrats kept saying this is about representation. But listen, let's be honest. They wanted race-based districts when those districts protect Democrat power. That's what this is about. And now that the court is stepping in and pushing back on these lower court rulings, you got Jackson, who is basically feuding with the majority and warning that the court is moving too fast. But here's the problem. Democrats only seem to defend race-based maps when those maps benefit them politically. If the same logic helped Republicans, they will call it racist, dangerous, and a threat to democracy, right? And so now the court is saying, no, you can't keep using race as a political tool, and Democrats are losing it. And so we got a lot to break down and get into. But first, make sure you smash that thumbs up button. If you do enjoy the content, subscribe to the channel to stay locked in with future videos. And so let's start here.
For decades, the Democrats have been using racial discrimination to draw these crazily drawn lines to try to protect Democrats. And now those crazy jigsaw puzzle lines have been using to protect members of the Democrat caucus in Congress can no longer be used. And here's the practical effect of what's going to happen. Because we are going to eliminate using race to draw these congressional lines. It means that, especially in these southern states, we are going to add maybe a dozen more Republicans to the United States Congress. Texas is going to add 5 Republican seats. Florida's going to add 4 Republican seats. There'll be many more in other southern states. And we will finally make those districts look a whole lot more compact. It's time for the Democrats to stop being such hypocrites and finally have everybody across the country to stop using race as a reason to draw congressional lines.
Texas Governor Greg Abbott with Maria on Sunday discussing his state's redistricting efforts while the nationwide debate ramps up. The new Texas map officially passing just last week after the Supreme Court overturned a previous ruling blocking it from being implemented. The decision could add as many as 5 House Republican seats ahead of the midterms.
And so the Supreme Court decided to fast track the implementation of his recent redistricting ruling ahead of the 2026 midterms. And we're talking about Louisiana and its racially drawn maps that had to be changed. And so the Supreme Court, let's get into this because this is where it started to get spicy. You had the Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito. He obliterated far-left Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson after she was the lone dissenter in the court's ruling forcing Louisiana to redraw its illegal congressional maps. Take a listen.
Saying the dissent in the suit levels charges that cannot go unanswered. The dissent would require that the 2026 congressional elections in Louisiana be held under a map that has been held to be unconstitutional because it draws racist lines. The dissent does not claim that, and it is now too late for the legislature or the district court to adopt a new map that complies with the Constitution, nor does the dissent assert that it is not feasible for the elections to be held under such a map. Instead, the dissent offers 2 reasons for its proposed course of action. One is trivial at best. The other is baseless and insulting. Pretty spicy language between 2 justices. One, probably the smartest or second smartest justice on the court, and the other one vying for being the dumbest on the court.
That is Joe Biden.
And so I want to give you guys a little bit more detail with what's going on here. Let's pick up where they left off. It says the dissent accuses the court of unshackling itself from constraints, Alito wrote. It is the dissent's rhetoric that lacks restraint, when he's referring to Jackson, that is. It says Jackson had warned that the high court's intervention risks improperly injecting itself into an active election and creating the appearance of partiality, pointing to ongoing voting and legal challenges already unfolding in the state. Legal experts observed the unusual pointed tone of Alito's response, suggesting it indicated a deeper internal friction. George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley said the conservative justice appeared to reach a breaking point in responding to Jackson's criticism. Justice Alito had enough, Turley wrote. He noted that her reliance on the 32-day period was a trivial objection that put form above substance, since no party had asked for reconsideration. It would be waiting for 32 days for no purpose, while the other parties had stated a reasonable and pressing need to finalize the opinion. Turley added that Alito took particular issue with Jackson's accusation that the Supreme Court was acting in an unprincipled manner. The dispute centered on the Supreme Court's procedural rule that typically allows about 32 days before a judgment is formally sent down to lower courts. Alito emphasized that the rule is flexible and intended primarily to allow time for rehearing petitions, which he signaled were not expected in this case. You got Ketanji Brown Jackson. She thinks that everybody else is wrong and she's right. And while it was a 6-3 decision, the other two liberals on this Supreme Court did not join her in the dissent. And I just want to remind people who Ketanji Brown Jackson is. She was appointed by Biden, who said he was going to put a black woman on the Supreme Court. Unfortunately, he chose someone who doesn't seem to understand something as basic as what her job actually is, as well as other things. Take a listen.
What I feel that I've been privileged to do is use the writings that I do, the work that I do, to explain my views about the way our government does and should work, the way the court does and should work. I think the nice part about being on the court is that you have the opportunity, whether you're in the majority or in the dissent, to express your opinions.
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No,
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in
Okay.
this context.
So you
I'm not a
believe the
biologist.
meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the
All right.
law and I decide. So I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
You know, when something like this happens, you're gonna have all the black leaders, those who they say they're looking out for the black community, black people, they're gonna start to speak up. They're gonna speak out. They have to. That's how it goes. Kind of know the playbook by now if you've been paying attention. They want you to believe that if you're black, you're gonna lose your rights, and that we're going back into Jim Crow. They'll say things like that. They're gonna say a lot of things that are just over the top. And so now you have the Black Caucus in Louisiana speaking out and melting down over the Supreme Court ruling. So let's get into this. Take a listen.
A group of state lawmakers worry that recent measures are targeting black elected officials in Louisiana, especially New Orleans.
Andres Fuentes speaks with political experts who say Governor Landry might very well prevail in this fight.
The Louisiana Black Legislative Caucus rallied together Monday, outraged over Governor Jeff Landry's decision to pause congressional elections until a new congressional map can be drawn.
The issue today is whether or not a person who looks like me will have an opportunity to serve in Congress.
The governor's move came after the U.S. Supreme Court ruled Louisiana's current map with 2 majority black districts is unconstitutional, since race was a factor in its formation. The election pause, coupled with bills to eliminate black elected officials like Orleans Parish Criminal Court Clerk Calvin Duncan, caused outrage among caucus leaders.
They wasn't satisfied with Judge Gravelet here in the Middle District of what he did last night, so they went to the Fifth Circuit to get that overturned. Now they're trying to remove black judges in New Orleans as well.
With the caucus supporting court battles against the measures, political analysts say it could be an uphill battle.
Proving blatant racism in court is always very difficult.
Dillard University political analyst Dr. Robert Collins says, per the Supreme Court ruling, states are allowed to create congressional maps based on party, meaning the governor could be justified in approving maps that eliminate black majority districts if it benefits his party.
The Republican supermajority in the state legislature wants to send more Republican congressmen to Washington.
As for the measures against the Orleans Parish Criminal Court clerk and the criminal court judges, Loyola law professor Dane Cialino says GOP lawmakers could get a win in those cases, too.
It's somewhat surprising that there have not been institutional changes in the court system for this long.
Cialino says it's difficult to argue against the legislation when supporters cite New Orleans' need to downsize.
There is a rational basis in population decline, in uniformity across the state, that I think it would be a difficult case to prove some sort of intentional race-based discrimination.
Now, we did reach out to Governor Jeff Landry's office for a response to the Legislative Black Caucus's comments, but we did not hear back.
So here's where I'll leave it. Democrats are in panic mode right now because they know what they have done, and they can't really fight it. They know the maps are drawn based on race, and really, let's call it what it is, based on black people. Because the only reason this is even a story is because the rate at which black people, compared to every other ethnicity, vote overwhelmingly Democrat, right? And so Democrats thought they could hide behind the veil of, this is all about black representation. This is all about making sure black people have a voice. That's what you're going to keep hearing if you turn on the news enough and listen. They're going to keep pushing that out. But that's a lie. It's not. This is about them keeping power, or in this case, losing power, because now they no longer have a stronghold on seats that were automatically Democrat. They could pencil them in, basically. And now that's done. They wrapped it in the language of representation, used race as justification, and expected Republicans just to kind of go along with it forever. Then you have the Supreme Court step in and say, well, no, you can't do that. And now Democrats are acting stunned. But those are my thoughts and the update. Now let me hear from you. Drop your comment down below. Appreciate when you guys chime in. Smash that thumbs up if you do enjoy the content. Subscribe for more. And as always, until next time.